We're looking again at verse 16. Thank you for your patience in this. We've got this morning and then one more time that we'll be looking at this particular verse. It is such a powerful verse. Matthew chapter 5, verse 16. We're going to begin reading at verse 14. Of course, we're dealing with the salt and light concept, which he has given to us in this particular paragraph, which is the function of the kingdom. And as he's talking about the function of the kingdom, the imagery that he's giving to us is salt and light. And the imagery, of course, is imagery of being. Salt doesn't do anything. Salt is something, and light is the same way. And yet they all have influence and effect, and he's describing Christianity in those terms. All of this spills out of the Beatitudes, which is the beginning of the Sermon on the Mount, of course, which begins in verse 3 and goes down through verse 12, which is the formation of the kingdom. And basically the formation of the kingdom is you in your helplessness, mourning in that helplessness, and he in his overwhelming resource coming, and in that intimacy of that embrace, your helplessness is in his being, you become the kingdom of God. Then he launches into this verse 13 through 16, which is, verse 13 through 16, which is the salt and light influence for and function of the kingdom in our world. How does this act? This intimacy with Jesus doesn't hide in a corner. It's impossible, he says, and he begins this light image. And it says in verse 14, you are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a candle and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Listen to this. Let your light so shine before men, that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. One verse is given to the salt, 3 verses are given to the light imagery, which may make the light imagery 3 times more important. The salt is a negative approach, the light is a very positive approach. And he begins the whole thing in verse 14 with, you are the light of the world. We recognize, of course, that Jesus said that about himself. So evidently what was going on in Jesus is now going on in us, which makes the whole thing, makes him the imagery, the fulfillment of the imagery of the light concept. So whatever he was, we are supposed to be as the light of the world. And the dynamic is that the you are is in the indicative, which is a simple statement of fact, but it carries with it the implication of an imperative, which is a command. In other words, this is not an order, but this is not a finger on the end of your nose. This is not, you will do this kind of a deal. But there is contained within this statement this overwhelming emphasis and truth that this just has to be. There's just no way out of this. This, when it goes down, here's the way it's going to go down. You can count on it. So there's a certainty about the fact itself, which carries an imperative with it. As he moves into verse 13, he begins to give us this, verse 14, he gives us this imagery of a city. He talks about a city that is set on a hill, cannot be hidden. And you stop and say, well, I thought you were talking about light, and yet he's changed the whole imagery. And it's the only statement he gives about the city in the whole 3 verses. So you look at it and say, what is the purpose of that? And he's focusing the imagery of the light. In other words, it's all about visibility. What I want you to think about, he says, when we're talking about you are the light of the world, I want you to think in terms of visibility. I'm not talking about heat. I'm not talking about any of the other kinds of attributes of light. I'm talking strictly about visibility. And he describes it in terms of a hill and a city setting on that hill. There are 2 kinds of visibility that he gets into in verse 15. And that is that you are going to see the light. So the light is going to be visible to you and you will actually see it. But there is more to it than that, he says, because it's going to be, you are going to enable others to see, which is another attribute of visibility. So he ties those 2 together in verse 15 as he lays that out for us. So to be seen and enabling someone to see is the function of the kingdom light, which is what you are, he says. Then he moves us to verse 16. Now, verse 16 is the thundering climax of this whole thing. Verse 16 is the reaching out, grabbing hold of this whole thing, summarizing it up, and handing it to you in the brief statements. Verse 16 is, I'm going to include everything I want to say about the light concept. And we've been working our way through that. We discovered, number one, attachment. We discovered that he uses the word your 3 times. He talks in verse 16, your light. He talks in verse 16, your good works. He talks in verse 16, your Father. It's not yours in the sense of ownership. It's yours in the sense of attachment. It's yours in the sense of you are intimately involved in this. It's yours in the sense that without you it can't take place, and yet you're not responsible for it, nor do you source it. And yet you are intimately involved. And it highlights the importance of your attachment to everything that's going on in what he wants to do in your life. So there is your attachment. We noticed also in the next phrase of verse 16 that he is highlighting this awareness idea, that they may see. They are going to be distinctly aware of your attachment to him. That there is no way to hide this. There is no way to camouflage this. There's no way to secretly do this. That this is blaring. It's going to come through. You don't have any choice on this. It's the way it is. You can count on it. You will not be able to produce it, but you won't be able to stop it from happening. Because this is just the way it is in the light idea. They are going to see. There's no way that you can be my friend without Jesus becoming an issue. There's no way that we're going to hang out that Jesus isn't going to become an issue. There's no way that down at my job, Jesus isn't going to be an issue. There's no way that in my home, Jesus isn't going to be an issue. That there is going to be an awareness of who I am in the attachment of his person. And in that awareness, there is going to be a display, a light concept. The imagery of light is going to take place in the awareness. He then moves us to the attractiveness. And we spent a whole study on that. They will see your good works. It's not good in quality. It's not that kind of goodness. It's not the kind of thing that you manufacture something and it works well, therefore it's good. It's not that kind of, it's not quality control kind of goodness. It's beautiful. That there is going to flow out of you this beauty, this aroma. The Bible talks about it in terms of fragrance. The Bible talks about it in terms of the flow of his presence, the fog of his beauty, that somehow your life becomes beautiful in the awareness of who he is within you, and it becomes winsome and attractive, he says. Good works. This morning we're looking at this phrase, last phrase, glorify your Father in heaven. It's the attitude. At the very base of all of this is an attitude. And the attitude is you're going to glorify your Father in heaven. I really got intrigued with the idea of glorifying your Father. And it gives you a focus of the visibility. In other words, if the whole function of the light is visibility, that you are going to see the light, and the light is going to enable you to see, then what's going to happen in that entire focus of that visibility is the Father is going to be planted in the middle of that and become desperately, desperately, desperately seen, and you are desperately going to be aware of who he is. So the whole purpose of the light thing is somehow that the Father might be seen. The Father might be seen. The word glory seems to be the issue. Glorify your Father in heaven. We've talked about it before. It's the Greek word doxa, and it literally has the idea of perspective. It has the idea of promoting. It has the idea of how you feel about a thing. And it literally, in this sense, it means to influence one's opinion about another so as to enhance the latter's reputation. In other words, the whole function of your life as light is to do what? To literally enhance, literally take the wholeness of who the Father is and enhance His reputation, enhance your vision, enhance what you're seeing of Him, literally pull it into a visible image until you are literally going to look at what's being enhanced and marvel at the Father Himself. So the whole idea of doxa is glorifying your Father, making Him visible, and in that visibility you become awestruck with the greatness of who He is, enhancing Him. This is about an attitude. If you go to the dictionary and look up the word for attitude, it literally is a settled way of thinking or feeling about someone or something, typically one that is reflected in a person's behavior. So what he's talking about in the passage is, you have this, you're light, and at the depth of your system there is this settled way of thinking and feeling. And what is that? That out of you would come this enhancing of who He is. That your settled way of thinking is literally that in every aspect of your personal life there would flow this enhancing, this glorifying, this magnifying, this revelation, this expanding of who He is, that somehow, some way, those around you would literally grasp the greatness of His person. That if I could get you to see who He is, if I could get you to just become aware of the depth of His person, if I could somehow describe Him adequately to you, that my life could somehow display Him in the glory of His person, you would be embraced by Him. You would run to His feet. You would come and get in on this. There would be no way we would not win our world. Why? Because we are light, and we are constantly enhancing, glorifying, expanding, magnifying the wonder of who He is. It's our attitude. It's the flow of our very being, making Him visible. I want to break this down for you, because you see, if your fundamental, deep internal attitude, a settled way you look at things is to enhance Him, do you understand what that would do to your life? I don't swear. Why? My mother washed my mouth out with soap a dozen times, and I got cured. No, that's not why. That's not why. Why don't you swear? Why don't you use bad language? Well, there's only one reason. I have this deep, internal, settled attitude, way of thinking, way of viewing Him. I've been so captured by the way He is. His person has become so huge in my life. The beauty of His very existence, the wonder of who He is and what He's done within me it's become so captivating that it literally, anything that disturbs that, anything that would go against that, anything that would mar Him, lower Him, degrade Him is eliminated in my life, because my settled way of thinking about Him is that He must be glorified, He must be elevated, He must be somehow enhanced, and I want to just enhance Him everywhere I go. So my whole language system comes under the control of that deep, internal, settled way of looking at things. The attitude, the way I look at Him and see Him. You are careful about your appetites. Oh, yeah. What you do with your appetites. Yeah. Your body drives. You're careful about the expression of your body drives. Yeah. Well, why? Well, the church has these rules. Well, what are they? I don't know. I forgot them. Is it that? Why are you careful about appetites and expressions of the appetites of your body? Oh, there's one reason, folks. Because there's this deep, settled, internal feeling and thinking about this person of Jesus that has literally captured me. And my whole driving attitude of life is that somehow I might enhance him. Somehow he might be expanded. Somehow the glory of who he is could be seen and known. And anything that would curb that is out. Anything that would degrade that, because it's anti the very settled attitude, the way I feel, the way I think about the person of Jesus. That settles the issue, you see. And so it's not about rules, and it's not about can you or can't you. It's not about right or wrong. It's about this deep internal attitude that has come because somehow you've been mastered by him. You've seen him. And somehow in your helplessness and the overwhelming resource of his person, the two of you come together. And in that coming together, the attitude is formed. And the attitude begins to be that of enhancing. Oh, I've got to glorify him. Oh, I want to enhance him in your sight and make you aware of him. Now let's take that concept and let's begin to walk through some things. Number one, compelled by passion. Again, this is not a forced thing. This is not I've got to kind of a thing. This is not in the realm of obligation. This isn't the realm of passion and burn and what's going on in the depth of my bones and what flows in the internalness of my very life. Well, aren't you obligated? Yes, I'm deeply indebted to Jesus. I realize that heaven being my home is because of his death. And I realize that the only peace I've got is because of him. I realize all of that. And there's this, I am obligated to him, man. He's done so much for me, so what should I do for him? I understand that in even that language, but see, this is not in that language because this is not about a doing kind of thing. It's not I'm trying to do enough to match what he did for me. It isn't, well, this is my debt and I'm trying to pay it back kind of deal, because that never could be done. So it isn't in the obligation realm. It's that at the depth of my life there's this deep, settled way of thinking about him, about feeling about him, that somehow he's captured me, and my whole view is it burns in my bones. It just roars through my system. It's a passion in everything I am that somehow he's got to be seen. I got to magnify him. I want to lift him up. I want to make him, I want to glorify. I want to make him seen to my world. I have to. It's a passion of the inner heart. Well, isn't this your duty? You could say, yes, it is. And I realize I have responsibilities because I claim to be a Christian, and that immediately places upon me responsibilities. And I'm responsible to go to church, and I'm responsible to sing the hymns, and I'm responsible to worship, and I'm responsible to live decent, and I'm responsible to... But this is not about responsibility, people. This is about a passion that burns in the inner being. This is about, I can't help myself kind of stuff. This is about a hungering and thirsting within. This is about a boiling in the bloodstream. This is about, whoa, a thumb in the back. This is about, wow, I'm just hyper, because there's this deep, settled way of viewing, of thinking about him. He's captured me, and the wonder of who he is, there's this passion that says, oh, I've got to magnify him. I've got to glorify him. I've got to make him seen, that somehow out of my life there has to become a pure. If you could ever see him like I see him, if you could get a hold of this, if you could be mastered, if he could capture you, if I could make him so visible for you that you would just fall in love with him and he would embrace you, if that's the passion. The passion. Well, aren't you afraid that you'll end up dying and going to hell if you don't stay true? Well, there is a hell. I understand that. And one could be afraid and tremble all of his life about missing heaven and going to hell. And we preachers have used that as a whip to get you to an altar. But what if it's bigger than that? What if this is not about I'm just afraid of what might happen? What if this is about I've been captured by what is happening? What if this is about an inward boiling, an inward passion? What if this is about, whoa, it just burns in my bones. I don't know how do you express it, that there's this deep, settled way of viewing and seeing, because I've seen him, and he's so phenomenal, he's so big, who he is so, wow, how do you describe him? And somehow if I could magnify him, if I could enhance him, if I could glorify him, if I could take his reputation and just make it known everywhere, if I could give adequate words to express the dynamic of who he is, and you could see him, I know you'd want him. I know you'd run to him. I know he would absolutely pull you out of wherever you are and take you where you ought to be. I know that could take place if I could just glorify him. Glorify. It's a passion, man. It's a passion. Well, preacher, we understand. You're a preacher and that's your career. I resigned. What could happen if it wasn't a career? What if you don't do this because it's a career? What if you have the career because you do this? What if the call of ministry, you don't minister in order to do this, but somehow you're into this enhancing of his person and making him visible and always got to be seen? Well, what if that so grips you that ministry begins to spill out of that? And could that be real ministry? And could you retire from that? See, that's passion. That burns in your bones, man. That's bigger than career. That's bigger than, I got to preach this morning. That's a burn in the bones that literally won't turn you loose. That just somehow, some way, it's a settled way of thinking that is so captured and so moved and becomes such a passion that, I've got to enhance him. I've got to magnify him. Somehow you got to see him. Have I said this enough? Somehow you got to see him. Somehow, if I could describe him adequately, I know you'd want him. If he could become visible enough in my life, I know you'd just run to him. You'd run to him. It would have to be. Because it's all about passion. That's the light stuff. And if you would say, well, Manley, if you're all steamed up about this, I'm not steamed up about this, how can I get all passionate about it like you are? Is there a pill or what is this? Well, it seems to me it's in the formation of the kingdom. That here I am in my helplessness. If you've ever seen that, and you've ever seen the wonder of his overwhelming resource that literally has engulfed you and pulled you out of. Now, probably if you've been adequate all your life and you're never in over your head and you don't ever need any help and you got everything under control, this wouldn't mean anything to you. But man, if you've ever really embraced your helplessness and seen his overwhelming resource, and that combination has come together, and you've actually seen him intervene and source your life to take you into a living experience that you never could have had without him and never could have dreamed of anyway, and had peace that never could have come, and victory in your life that was absolutely impossible. And once that takes place, wouldn't that be passionate? Wouldn't that wouldn't that give you a settled way of looking at things? We've quoted so often, I hesitated to do it again, but the 2 Corinthians 4:6 stuff, and Paul he just visualizes this in the light. He says, for it is God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shone in our hearts. See, all of this is the light idea. For it is God who commanded light to shine out of darkness, who has shown in our hearts to give the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Jesus Christ. I'll take the whole concept that we're talking about and jam it into this verse. See the word glory of God in the face of Jesus? What was going on in Jesus? Oh, he had this passion, he had this burn. What he was about all the time was this flow. He had a settled way of thinking about his Father, and somehow it had to be, he had to enhance the reputation. He made the Father's visible before us. He became the visible image of the invisible God. And he says God literally took how he is and jammed it into the face of Jesus. And Jesus' life just literally flowed this, he enhanced, he made this, he glorified the Father. And then he goes, of course, to that next verse, which is verse 7, Paul does, and says, we have this treasure in earthen vessels. Oh, the same thing has happened to us, he says. The very passion that burned in the very being of Jesus and made him want to demonstrate the Father. And his whole life was, oh, Father, what do you want? Where do you want to go? How do you want to act? What's the spill out of this? You want a cross? What do you want? That took him through gardens of Gethsemane and difficult times and kept him level and kept him strong. That passion that burned in his bones, where did that come from? It was planted there by the Father in that embrace. He's done the same for you. Be passionate. Be passionate. See, this whole thing is compelled by passion. I've had a dream of the kind of church we could be, where we wouldn't have anybody that did anything in the church they didn't want to do. Through the years, I got so sick of Sunday school superintendents standing up saying, we need a teacher for the 4th grade boys. And then they would look right at certain so-and-so, and while the benediction was going on, that certain so-and-so would sneak out the back door trying to get away because they know they were going to be buttonholed. And then when they were buttonholed, of course, they didn't get away. They were caught in the parking lot. They'd wring their hands and say, oh, I'm not adequate. I really don't have the time. Well, if I got to, well, okay, I will, but only temporarily. Wouldn't it be something to have a church where everybody did what they did because they had this passion, this burn, this they came to you and begged. They came to you, oh, you will let me do this, won't you? Oh, you will, won't you? Wow. Wouldn't it be something to have to stand up and say, folks, don't give any more money, please. You've been so passionate in your giving. We got too much. We can't spend it all. Please, back off. Take your wife out for dinner. Wouldn't it be something? Because we got this passion. We got this. Wouldn't it be something? We didn't have to say invite, and we wouldn't have to have friends days, and we wouldn't have to have special programs to get people to bring other people in. We just got this passion. This burns in our bones, man. It just, I just can't, because he says, I got to enhance him. I got to make him seen. I got to glorify. And ministry would all spill out of this passion to magnify. That's what he's talking about. Let me take you from there and couple with that an idea. It's change your perspective. Now, if we're compelled by this overwhelming passion, which is this glory idea, a subtle way of thinking about him that literally is whelming up within you, and it's literally, you want to enhance him, his person, and make him seen and known. If you ever get into that, I mean, if that passion begins to burn, the whole making him seen and known becomes really important. But here's the strange, and I tried to talk about this a little bit a few Sundays ago, and didn't do very well, but probably won't do much better today. But the idea is that when you have that passion and you get into his person, and I want to magnify him, I want to make him seen, somehow as I get into him, and my whole perspective begins to change. Because I begin to take on his perspective. And what drives him, what he wants, becomes somehow what I want. And what does he want? It's always about others. And there's a trick in all of that, and I don't know how to explain it to you. There's a trick in all of that. Because you see, you can become, we got to win people to Jesus. We got to win this town. And the focus becomes on others, and that's good. But you can get all consumed with that and miss him. And then the whole thing falls apart. So this is not about just winning others. This is about, oh, I've got to make him seen to you. Why? Because I've seen him, and in the embrace of his person, his passion, which is you, has become my passion. Did that make any sense? And there's a shift that takes place. So it isn't just I'm into him, I am into him, but because I'm into him, I'm into you. And I'm not just into you, I'm into him, but because I'm into him, I'm into you. Which puts you in an altogether different position than you would be otherwise. Otherwise, you become a number on my board. You become a part of the attendance. But see, when it's not, you're just not a person that shows up and puts one more dead body in the pew. This becomes, oh, I'm into him, and because I'm into him, I'm into you. That puts the whole, oh, I've got to communicate to you, see. I've got to make him known to you. You've got to get a hold of him. You've got to see him. Because if you could see him, you would embrace him. You would want him. You would go deeper into him. Well, what you want to do in this town is improve the society of this town. I don't give a rip about this town. I'm not trying to improve the community. Well, what are you trying to do? Oh, that he might be seen. Oh, that somehow would the town improve? Yes. But it isn't about improving the society. It's about, oh, he must be seen. Oh, somehow he's got to become visible. That through my life, well, you're on a campaign against abortion. You want to eliminate abortion. No, I don't give a rip about abortion. What I want to do is enhance his person. I want you to see him. And if you see him, abortion will be eliminated. Are you getting this? See, that's the idea that he's promoting. Well, you want to have well, keep those teens busy so they don't get into trouble. This is not just busy work for teens, man. I don't even like teens. What I'm after is I want teens to see Jesus. Somehow they got to see him. Somehow they got to embrace him. This is not about free pizza, and this is not about teen programs. This is, oh, he's got to be enhanced, and they've got to get a vision of him, and they've got to. That's this whole deal. Well, why do we go down to the square and spend our time in Halloween at the square? Oh, he's got to be seen, man. Why do it? Jamming with the general. I don't give a rip about jamming with any general. Why would you even go down there? He's got to be seen, man. Somehow Jesus has got to be. See, why would you go to the trouble to have Kiwanis in this building? I don't care about Kiwanis, and I don't give a rip about Little League. Well, what's the deal? Oh, he's got to be seen. He's got to be seen. So this is not about, okay, we won't do those things. We'll just do these things. We won't have time to do any of that. It isn't about that. It's about gathering it all in here. And in every activity, in everything we do, there's this passionate burn that just, Please don't quit your job and come down to help in the church. Keep working and bring your money. So don't quit your job. This is not eliminating your job, see. This is about, could you go down to your job and enhance his, could you make him seen? Could you have a burn in your bones until your job becomes the platform by which you Wow. I got to have this. Jesus, not a chance in the world of pulling this off. When it comes down to it, I get distracted and things get in the way and complications and relationship stuff and all this kind of stuff begins to, wow, and I get so distracted from you and complications in the job and my home and all this stuff begins to happen in my life. And could you capture me this morning? And again, in this hour, I want to look deep into my helplessness. I want to look deep into my lack. And oh, how I need your resource. And not your resource in terms of your power and let me have it and you go away, but in terms of you. I need you. I need you. Could you burn in my bones? Could you capture me anew? Could I fall in love with you all over again? Could you somehow so engulf me? Could my whole purpose of being light that spills out of helplessness and in the embrace of your person, could it all be to glorify, to enhance your reputation, to make you known? And in the name of Jesus, everything in my life that distracts from your reputation, that makes you look bad, in the name of Jesus, you got to clean me up. I give you the right to plow into my life and change anything you need to change to make yourself look good. That in the totality of my life experience there might be an enhancing, glorifying, magnifying of your person. Oh, people have got to see you. They're so tired of church. They're so tired of organizational stuff. They're so sick of programs. And they've got to see you. They've got to see you. Heads are bowed. Pray with me, will you, that will take place in my life. Pray with me, will you, that that'll go deeper in me than it's ever gone before. Pray with me, will you, that my mind and my heart will literally be cleansed in a new and a fresh way. Pray with me, will you, that the passion, I will not get distracted, I will not get off. Pray with me, will you? Moments of seeking.